All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ACM Cyber's crash course car hacking. So today's check-in code is going to be iHackCars. So make sure you go to the members portal and enter that registration code. It only works though uh, during the event. So if you're not here and you're watching the recording, sorry. So yeah, just kind of quick introduction about the event. So cars are really much like anything else nowadays, where everything is connected, and so that's kind of what we're going to explore a little bit, talking about the history, and then do kind of a basic introduction to some techniques you can do to hack cars. All right. So who am I? I'm Chris McGuire. I'm the director of content at ACM Cyber for this year. I helped found ACM Cyber last year and founded the Cybersecurity Club before that. So I'm still a noob. So car hacking, I'm going to be kind of like upfront. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I never even have done this on a real car yet. I've only done it in the virtual machine that we'll use tonight. So I'm definitely still a noob on this topic, and welcome any feedback from the audience if you have any insight. Um, yeah, so there was a fun quote from everyone's favorite movie. I live my life quarter time at a mile, or quarter mile at a time. Check-in code is going to be in the bottom left corner throughout the presentation. So if you guys need it, it's there. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I'm a graduating senior. Woohoo. All right, so time for a poll. And I actually got polls to work this time, I think. So let's go ahead and have everybody drop in what they think here into the poll. Do you always feel in control of your car? This is like the question we will be talking about tonight. Or highlighting, I guess, is the main thing. All right, awesome. Got solid response, 75%. So 71% of the people ask why. Why would they want to feel in control of their car? All right. So yeah, this is something hopefully everybody will be ready for. And this is the reason why you want to be in control of your car. You do not want it to be flying through a building and crash into other cars with like a wonderful bicycle like being tossed in the air. All right. So the origin story, more particularly of this workshop. So there is a wonderful convention that typically happens in the LA area in California. It's put on by an organization called Hackaday. Last year's in 2020, obviously with COVID, it could not happen in person, so they put on an event called Remoticon 2020. And so this is like really more of a hardware focused hacking organization. So if you are interested in like embedded devices, this is the perfect group for you to like follow. There's a link to their website here, hackaday.io. They have an awesome like newsletter that talks about a lot of cool projects. So at this online convention, a person named Amit Reddy put on a workshop. Basically, what I'm going to regurgitate here, I've modified it to include some more history and more insight to some of the things related to UCSD. And so he's a recent mechatronics graduate, and he's put, at the time, he had put 100 hours into the hobby and claimed to be the expert beginner. And I'm not even at that level. So hopefully his stuff works. All right. So if you want to participate, so I probably should have made a poll. So please let me know if you're planning to participate, because if you're not, we'll just I'll just show you what happens. Otherwise, go ahead and download at acmurl.com cyber car setup. This is going to have the instructions for how to set up the environment in a virtual machine. So hopefully you already have a virtual machine running. It definitely works on Linux, which is what I'm using. Mac, it will probably also work. I'm not sure how the GUI stuff will work though. The main tools we're going to be using today are CANutils, which is basically socket CAN, user space, utilities, and tools. So there's a bunch of like utilities and tools actually in this download package, CANutils, which we'll look at later. And then IC Sim. So this is your instrument cluster, which is, your accelerometer, your blinkers, and it shows if your doors open or lock. You can see it in the image on the right here. Is basically what we'll be looking at. All right, so I didn't get any volunteers to help struggle, so just DM me if you are planning to set this up. Again, feel free to let me know in chat. I'll do my best. It shouldn't be too difficult. There's a few quirks, but I think I covered them all in the write-up for how to install the software. All right. So I'll just take a quick pause. Can somebody vote in the chat? Just say yes or no if you're planning to participate, with the hands-on stuff. Okay. Yeah, no worries if you're not. I just wanted to make sure so I know what to spend time on. All right. So the origin story from the research side. So looking back at time of research on hacking cars, some of the earliest hacking that was published or talked about in car forums was reprogramming the powertrain. And this was really the whole goal was to get better performance out of sports cars or, think Tokyo Drift, right? The car hackers and Fast and Furious are out there trying to improve their performance through hacking. In 2005, there was some people realizing that the Bluetooth built into the cars were vulnerable, and this let attackers listen to the conversations and also download contact information from the car's infotainment. The first paper on car hacking that I could find is actually from UCSD in partnership with University of Washington. There's a bunch of links at the end of the slide deck that will link to a lot of documents and news articles. Then right after the next year, the UCSD and the Washington team again attacked the car and were able to get remote control of it. Whereas in the first one was more just showing how to attack the car. 2015, there's when some research that had been ongoing since 2010, 2013 timeframe was the Jeep hack. And it was presented at Black Hat as a talk. And if anyone's not familiar with Black Hat, this is a security conference put on for professionals, whereas DEF CON is more for hackers, actual hackers. Black Hat, they sell you stuff more. But anyways, the Jeep got hacked. It was all over the news. I remember watching 60 Minutes and them talking about it there. Also that year, if anyone's familiar with Sami Kamkar, he's a pretty well-known hacker. In cars in the old days, not so much anymore, but they used to have a service called OnStar, where if there's an emergency, you hit your OnStar button and there's somebody to help you, with whatever that might be. Yeah, OnStar, exactly. And so basically he was able to attack a car through that system. Then skipping up a few years, really between 2011 and 2015, there's a lot of activity that's happening in the car hacking scene. That's where I would say it starts to boom into what it is today. 2018, everyone's favorite car is Teslas, right? Who doesn't love a Tesla? Woo-woo. I'll get one eventually if I ever make money. So Tesla key fob, this is an attack where people are able to basically copy the key fob and unlock and drive away in cars. And then up today, the most big focus stuff is a lot of infotainment. So these are the systems where you can, in a Tesla, for example, you can watch TV, play games. In maybe your more basic cars, it's your radio interaction. I have one of the cheapest cars out there, and it still has a lot of computer built in for the infotainment. And so this is where you see a lot of data leakage, also being able to get access through it, through Bluetooth, and then pivoting onto other systems in the car. Let's see, checking the chat. Yes, Teslas are always problematic. So just some brand lessons, like you're all probably seeing like, oh no, did my car get hacked? Most likely sometime in the history, your car has been hacked. And if it hasn't, it's probably because researchers just didn't focus on that brand or, make or model per se. But it's pretty much safe to say like some attacks obviously focus on like the Jeep. Other attacks like in Bluetooth are going to be more widespread across the thing. All right. Checking the engine. So I just wanted to check in. I know most people said they're not going to participate, but just wanted to check in to get started on the VM, check to make sure it's up and running, and then just do a quick basic check on the installation of the applications we're going to use today. So, all right. So if anyone's here, I'm just going to try to do this on the same screen. Yeah, I can do it on the same screen. And of course, I got locked out from talking, and I probably don't remember the password. Yep. There we go. All right. So to get set up, I already have all the applications kind of like installed, but you're going to want to run. So ls, right? You can kind of see, hopefully, I have the ICSIM folder, so we'll cd into that. Okay, then we'll set up the vcan, which I'll kind of explain what that is later. It uses sudo in the script. So what this is running, I can switch back real quick just so you're aware of what it's running. Oops, that is not the right thing. Okay, so this is running basically modprobe. This is actually one of these is supposed to be vcan. Oops. And there goes my whole thing. Wonderful. No. All right, spoilers. Okay. So vcan, it sets this up basically. The vcan is a network, just real briefly. So we're setting up a virtual network here. That's why we have these IP links, address, and setups. And then we can run the ICSIM vcan 0 and controls. Basically, we'll communicate over that virtual network that we set up. All right. So we got that set up now. So ICSIM vcan 0. So here is our gauges and cd to ICSIM controls vcan 0. And here are our controls. So I'll actually just cover up those terminals because we're not going to need those terminals. They just pretty much stay open to run the applications. All right, and just to do a quick check, I put the controls in the write-up, but if anyone's curious, you click on the control panel here, and then if you hit the up arrow, you should see the car is now accelerating. Okay, and then if we hit the left arrow, the left blinker turns on. So if you hold it, it keeps blinking. Right arrow. And then it's kind of weird buttons for the door locks, but if you do the right shift and A, you unlock the door. Left shift A locks it. Right shift B to unlock the other door. And then right shift X and right shift Y. And left shift X and Y to close. Then if you do right shift, okay, so holding the left shift and tapping the right shift unlocks it, then holding the right shift and tapping the left shift locks all the doors. So hopefully, if you are participating, you can follow those instructions in the write-up to, test out to make sure you're at where you're supposed to be. All right. So here, I actually was building this presentation, and then like 10 minutes ago, I realized I downloaded some pictures and didn't put them in here. So we're going to have a nice little image interlude. What does car hacking really look like? So this is like one example. This is probably a Raspberry Pi that has some adapters that connect into the port that we'll look at later. And you can see they are using the CAN sniffer to pull off what is happening in the car's CAN. All right. Here's another image. This one, I believe, is from a DEF CON event where it is a simulated car, not an actual car. Obviously, all the parts are from real cars, but they've dismantled them and connected them for easier access and easier to study them. Yeah, if you think that is a bad looking car, wait till you see this next picture, Sean. So here is an image from the last DEF CON that was in person, DEF CON 27, where they have a competition where if you can hack the Tesla, you get to own the Tesla. But one kind of problem is you can do anything you want to this car. I think there's a few rules on certain things, but if you notice the hood here is dented, that is because they took hammers and bowling balls to the middle of the hood. And then everyone, including myself, put many, many stickers on this wonderful brand new Tesla. I don't believe anyone won this year that I attended, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look that one up. Won what? So the Tesla, if you hack the Tesla, you get to own the Tesla. And so by winning, I mean I don't think anyone hacked it and took this Tesla home. So people have in the past at other events, like if you look up Pwn to Own, there's like a whole organization where they'll put out like a MacBook Pro and be like, okay, if you can hack the MacBook, then correct. Yeah. So somebody in private chatted me a question. This is like an off the factory floor Tesla. Like there's nothing, I guess, modified in the sense that it's easier than what it is. And why the hammer? It's people have a lot of fun at DEF CON and do crazy things. So I did not know the person who did that, but you can pretty much try breaking it. Maybe they were trying to set off like an airbag to find a vulnerability because yeah, like there's a lot of things like we'll look at in a little bit about, yes, this is at DEF CON, but the Pwn to Own event is like pretty well known nowadays. So like the airbag system, for example, like maybe if you trigger the airbag and send code at the precise time that it triggers, you might be able to like access the car or something. There's like a lot of crazy things people probably were trying because timing events are one of the best ways to hack stuff. All right. Oh, I just realized I didn't share the results from last time. Yeah, so people are dropping. Yeah, so the question in chat is, do you get the car, I think, as in new condition or as is? And I believe you get the car as is. I'll have to look up the rules, or if someone else wants to look up the rules. But really, I mean, it's probably still cheaper to fix it up than buy a Tesla. Just replace the parts. All right, let's go on to this next poll here. So let's see, launch polling. All right, so which bus is our ride for the evening? Does anyone want to take a guess? All right. Buses are amazing, okay? That's like my main mode of transportation when we were on campus. Nice, we got 100% voting, and I will share the results this time. So I think some people were listening as I was talking. So we are talking about CAN bus, which is a bus related to the computer hardware. which we'll talk about here shortly. The BART, that's like something in San Francisco. I don't even think it qualifies as a bus. Maybe it does. So yeah, anyone else that didn't say CAN, sorry, not accurate. All right, and my wonderful GIF transition here. All right, so let's kick the can. So let's start off with, how do you access this thing, right? So you have a car, or somebody you know has a car. And so there is a device, or like a port, that's what it is. It's called the OBD2 port. And this is what you'll plug into, like if a car mechanic comes or anything, they plug it into this device. And there's a lot of different things going on here. And this port's used, like I said, in diagnostics and emissions testing to help monitor the car and what's going on. So you can connect with the hardware, right, to this. There is a nice open source application called Canalize, which will help you with a lot of the reading of what's going on here. You also can connect to the car with logic analyzers, software-defined radios. Those won't like the software-defined radios, SDRs, those won't directly connect you to the CAN necessarily, but it'll allow you other attack vectors when trying to hack a car. So one thing to note is that every vendor is slightly different. So I can't guarantee that this exact OBD2 port or like the setup is going to be exactly right for every single car. So you'll just have to look up what the manufacturer talks about. When you're getting output, so when you're getting output from it, you're just reading it. The bad stuff happens when you start inputting information to the CAN bus. So hopefully that answers your question, Derek. I'm not 100% sure. All right. Yeah, so then software, right? So we're going to need software to interact with these computers. We're going to use CANutils in this workshop specifically. SavvyCAN is basically very similar services as CANutils, but provides a GUI to interact. I didn't download it, so I'm not going to cover it in this workshop, but I highly recommend looking into that one if this interests you. Wireshark also can handle some of the CAN packets, but based on some information I gathered, it's not the #1 choice. Again, SavvyCAN is probably going to be the overall best software tools to use. So CANutils, a few things I wanted to talk about is this is where you have CAN sniffer, CAN dump, and you have CAN player and CAN send. So this is really your command line interface to interact with the vehicle. All right. So some dirts on the spec, right? So what is CAN? This is your control area network. It's originated in 1986 and became an international standard in 1993. You can find this on cars. Heavy machinery, robots are the most common. It also sometimes appears on airplanes and pretty much any kind of vehicle. Its standard spec is 2 wires, basically from the ECU or like the engine control unit, or maybe even the transmission, like electronic control unit to IO nodes. So these are inputs like the accelerator, the braking system, infotainment system also can be running on a CAN bus. And then the way it works is it provides arbitration. So this means like, okay, we've got, you can see in the image, there's a bunch of things connected to this. So how do we know like what takes priority? This is the arbitration. So who can talk and when they can talk. And so each device has a arbitration ID in that packet. And so whoever has the smallest ID is going to take priority. All right. Yes, Canvas. Right. That's a good one. Somebody should look up the car hacking website. It's like autosec.org, I think. So CAN packets. All right. So this is what is actually flying over those two wires. So the first one starts off just like a start frame bit. Arbitration ID is typically 12 bits. It includes the 11-bit ID and a remote quest request. I'm not 100% sure what the remote quest does, but there's a link at the end of the slides where you can go to learn a lot more detail on this. The control data. So data is kind of interesting. In the specification specifically, there's a max of 8 bytes. But depending on what the data is, that may or may not change the size. But again, this is just kind of like a brief overview of the CAN packets. I'm not an expert on that one, so there's links at the end if you want to learn more. All right, so another poll. Woohoo! All right, so I know I've been talking for what, like 30 minutes already. So let's take like a little fun break and, what was the best part of your quarter so far? All right. Sharing the results. All right, so I looks like a mere margin won out with the best part is that is over is it's almost over is the best part of the quarter. Hacking game consoles was also the second choice, which was an awesome event. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. So the high-low, if we're talking about, I think, let me go back a couple slides real quick. I think it's here. Is this what you're talking about? The 6 and 14 ports and the high-low. So I'm not 100% sure on this port exactly. I didn't read into that. But my understanding, what I gather is this is just going to be those like 2 wires that we talk about. So it's like the back and forth high-low signals. The second thing is there's also different speeds for the CAN bus, high and low speeds. And I think there's also like a middle speed. So it might be one of those options. And I'll just refer you to the links at the end of the slide deck for more information. All right, so this was a GIF that Nima shared on Twitter. So if you guys don't follow our Twitter, you should get on there and follow us. That's also where like 90% of the cybersecurity community hangs out. So definitely highly recommend it. All right, so recording the signals. So we'll start going into the back and forth between the virtual machine and the slides now, as this is kind of more of the hands-on material. So to record the signals, we can just use like CAN dump to simplify it, and we'll copy those into a file. And then we'll just start simple. We'll just unlock the doors once. So we'll just, that is going to be hold the left shift and tap the right shift. And then we'll take a look at them as what's happening. All right, so let's switch over. All right, so let's see, CAN dump -L to first.log vcan 0. All right, so nothing's happening on the screen yet, but it's recording, as you can see. So we'll unlock the doors once, and then we'll just kill this. So basically the reason why we did that is we just want to capture that one command, and this is what we'll search for. All right. So we can kind of just do a quick, what was it? I did not write this down on my notes. I think it was head 10, and then pipe it into log too long. Oh, I need my file name, duh. First.log. Okay, so let me also take this out just so we can see the differences. Okay, so what's happening here is, oh, I don't know if people can actually read that. Can anyone see what my terminal says? Yeah, okay, you guys can read it. So real quick, is the IC sim and the control panel working together? Yes, so those are actually both parts of the same like application you download from GitHub. And so the simulator here is just simulating like what a car dashboard would have, whereas the CAN bus control, obviously you can see you can use a game controller to do this, or you can also use your keyboard. The list of commands, I put it in that setup documentation. I probably should put it on the slides. All right, so back to the terminal here. What are we looking at? So the actually second command is the raw format of the log file. We've got our timestamps, followed by which network we're on, VCAN 0. And then we've got some numbers, $, and then some more numbers. And you can see there's varying lengths. So what you're looking at here is the first set of numbers, or they're hex also. That is going to be the actual like the node ID essentially. The $, and then followed by the data. So that's like the instructions that are being sent. So what we would typically do here, is we would be parsing this file. We do the simple algorithm of cut it in half and replay it to see what happens. I think that's what my next slide is. Yeah. So now we kind of like looked at the file in the raw format. Oh, here you go. Well, I said put this here. So we're going to check the haystack, and then we're going to play back the message, and then we're going to find the that needle, right? And then my nice little image here is the algorithm basically that we use. Delete half the recording, play the first half. Did it work? Whatever, and you just go in the circle until you find that one command. So while that is like very time consuming, like let's switch back real quick. So if I do the WC-L on the first log, you can see there's 20,692 line items. So that's a lot of commands that ran in like 30 seconds. So let me just reset this real quick. Oops, clicked on the wrong one. Got to do it from the control panel. And so what we'll do is we'll just do can player -L first log. So, oops, is that an I? Sorry, that's an I, not an L. Google formatting. Okay, so we are running the file here. At some point, it should unlock the doors. And the doors are unlocked. So did everyone see that and how it worked? Yep, all right, cool. All right, so basically what we do is we would just keep splitting this file until we can find that single command. I think that's kind of straightforward. Let's see. Let me check my notes real quick. So if we do cat first log and grep, I'm going to do 19B. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick shortcut here because I don't want us to spend all night trying to split and find that exact command. But what we can do here is it should be this ID number that is from that workshop that I did. It's 19B is what unlocks the door, followed by a bunch of zeros. So we can copy this line. And so if I reset my car environment, And then I can do can send, vcan 0, and then followed by that information. It should unlock the doors. So did everyone see how that worked? Yeah, so most people, because every like ID will be slightly different, what you'll have to do is basically go through your file. Like if you're doing this on a real car, right, you're going to create a log file of the commands you sent, which we have some workshop files I'll show you later. But yes, you basically have to randomly search. So, you do your, binary search, right? So you do the first half. If it's not in the first half, then you check the second half. And when you find it, then you cut that section in half. Basically, it's this algorithm here in this diagram. So, play the first half. Did the doors unlock? No. Play the second half. Did the doors unlock? Yes. Then are you down to one packet? If you're not at one packet, then you just keep going, in a loop until you're able to find it. It's very time consuming. The one way to kind of like speed this up would just be doing a lot of research about the car that is your target. So, if you're driving like a Honda CRV, which is the example that we have today, then you would go online, which there's some links where to find that information. And you can download maybe compared notes to see what happens. But I haven't done this on a real car myself, so I can't really tell you a strategy other than this algorithm to finding that needle in the haystack, because that's kind of what it is. It is a needle in the haystack. And yeah, I only know that because somebody else did all the work and told me the answer for why 19B works for the IC simulator. All right, cool. Great question, Derek. Does anyone else have any questions, or we're ready to keep going? All right, doesn't look like we have any questions, so we'll keep going. All right. All right, so this is, you want to see like what's actually happening, right? Actually, this is kind of like a good question, reminds me. So we were talking about can sniffing earlier. So this is one way to look at things, right? Using can sniffer here. But really, I almost feel like using the log and then using like Python to find that stuff that you want will be much more like effective. But so yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just test out what can sniffer would do. All right. Okay, so can sniffer. So the -C here is going to turn on the colors, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay. All right. So right now you should see the screen like changing a lot. And there's a bunch of red here and white. So the red, what this is basically what's changed. So can sniffer is taking like a snapshot of a series of commands and then comparing it to the next series of commands. And so what we can do here is we can kind of get rid of what we don't want, right? Like things are happening, but we don't really care. So we do pound plus enter, and doing this basically until it's all gone. There you go. Yeah, mostly things are gone, right? Okay. So if we want to see what happens when I lock the doors, so they're unlocked right now. So maybe that was a bad example. You can kind of see as I hit these things, it's going really fast, but maybe the accelerator is better. Yeah, so if I hold the accelerator down, you can kind of see that there's a constant bit always changing there. So if you can, be quick enough, you can capture which device this is. So that's kind of like how this works. You can also, so changing the, getting rid of the color is actually called notching. There should be a way to save this notch information. And you can also clear it. So if you wanted to clear it, you would just do asterisk enter, and you can get all that color change back. All right, cool. So I guess, is there any questions on this part? No? All right. Yeah, so one last thing on the can sniffer. Actually, I think it's my next slide. I'll just go to the next slide. I'm fairly certain it's this one. Yeah. So needing a GUI, right? So can sniffer is great. It's kind of hard though because it's passing in the command line so fastly or so quickly. So SavvyCAN is basically a GUI, a graphical user interface for all the tools that we just looked at. It has sniffing, it has playback. Yeah, give me 1 second, Derek, and I'll come back to your question. The SavvyCAN, it has all the same like features that CANutils does, but it provides this nice GUI interface. So it's a little bit more reasonable for someone who wants to like find the information a lot faster. So you can kind of see in this image here, I don't think this is the same car, but you have your IDs of the devices. So if you turn on your turn signal and you see this changing after you notch everything, then you'll say, hey, look, this line is the one I need to target. You can also filter out IDs once you've determined they're not useful. And unnotching, again, changes all the colors back. Can you, I guess, Derek, I'm going to go back to the thing here. So your question, I think, is that, can I use the controller so we see what we're sniffing is actually doing? Right. So right now, all of this red and white on the terminal, the red are things that are changing. So I'm going to notch everything, which basically means take like a snapshot. So that way it gets cleared. So let me make sure I'm on that terminal, right? So as I notch things, there's a few stragglers, it looks like. But yeah, there we go. So I pretty much have taken a snapshot of everything. So we know now that anything that changes red is what I'm actually doing. So I'll click on my control panel. So I can use the controller. So I'm going to accelerate the vehicle. So you can see in the IC simulator, the gauge is going up. And then back in the terminal, you see there's only 1 bit changing now. Right, so that's what the acceleration is. Does that kind of make sense, Derek? So yeah, so now there's no more acceleration in the car. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I can find the bit address for the acceleration. So let me click back on the control panel. So I'll blink left. So you can also see there's some red flashing. Not quite as often, but it's there. So that's the change on the network, basically, that's happening. And if I change right, yeah, it's like probably a similar bit, different ID maybe. But yeah, so it's kind of like can sniffer is kind of difficult to use. I don't find it super useful, mainly because going back to this SavvyCAN, this image that's here is basically exactly what can sniffer is, but it's a lot easier to use and more visually, like, I don't know, it's easier for me to see things because I don't see the whole screen scrolling up and down constantly. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, we'll keep moving on then. All right, so it was great playing in this virtual environment, right? So IC Sim basically is simulating the entire car for us. That's why, like, when we looked at that log, there's so much information because it's just a bunch of garbage stuff in there that IC Sim is generating. So what we'll do is we'll just take like a quick look at some things. So the person who did the workshop that I attended provided these files. So what he did was he took a log of what the car was doing when it was driving. He took a log of when the car was idle. Then he also took a log where he, pushed the buttons on the steering wheel when he turned the steering wheel. So he turned the steering wheel left, right. And then he also took a log file of when the wipers and stalks. So like those are the buttons like turn on your lights, turn off your lights. So we can just like take a quick look at them. We're not going to do anything like super crazy with them. So desktop. Yeah, so let's see. CVR. So yeah, here's the files basically, right? So we can just let's do the head dash and 10 driving log and pipe that in. So log too long, I actually didn't talk about this when I should have, but log too long is built into CANutils, and that is going to basically put this into a nice readable format for us. Whereas without that, if you don't remember, is kind of like unreadable. It's not quite as easy to read. Okay, so looking at this, I mean, we don't really know what any of this stuff is, but you kind of get the idea that this file, if you want, you can play with it more, and you'll be able to see like what a real car is doing if you don't want to test out your own car. So, okay, it was great talking about the CAN bus, right? But this is like one thing in the car. While it's super important, we can't really just go up to every car and plug into the OBD2 port, right? Like, who's going to let us do that? So, how are hackers targeting things nowadays? Bluetooth modules are often vulnerable. Embedded internet modems are now everywhere in cars. Wi-Fi routers, USB devices, NFC, and high definition radio are all new vectors of attack. And like the infotainment connects into the CAN bus. So through Bluetooth, you connect to your infotainment system. You can find vulnerabilities in the infotainment system, and then you pretty much own the whole car. I mean, and things are like you can see in this image here. Well, it's a GIF that's moving. You know, you got the engine, you've got the brakes, you've got batteries in electric cars. Like there's a lot, even batteries in real cars. You can just turn on lights and just let the car run all night long. Nobody will know. So there's a lot of things, a lot of dangerous things that can happen with cars. All right, more to why. So why do people want to hack cars? And obviously there's criminals, but we're not criminals, right? We're students, we're cybersecurity researchers. Maybe, one example here is to fix your own car. So which brings up a nice like legal topic that we won't cover today, but the right to repair. So if you own a car, you should be able to, repair it. And nowadays with all the computer technology, it's kind of like we need access to those car computer systems in order to properly repair our own stuff. Complexity of cars, it's just a whole, breadth of research available. Once you start digging in keyless entry, cellular connections, satellite radio, advanced cruise control. So it's like really important for people to kind of like learn about this, not both from like a hacker standpoint and from like a research standpoint or a developer. So, if you don't like something about cruise control, you can learn about how it's currently being done and then, build it out yourself. So one thing to note about all this stuff is every make and model has differences, even like model years. So even if you do like a Ford Focus from, 2000 and then one from 2020, the CAN bus and the log messages and how you interact with the vehicle is going to be completely different. So automakers obviously want to kind of hide this information. I think it's mainly proprietary, and also they want to do like security through obscurity, which how many people know that it never works, right? So that's a little bit of like why you want to do kind of this hacking stuff on it. So the future. So we talked about the CAN bus, but people are kind of moving away from it. One of the things is automotive Ethernet, and the driving force behind some of these developments is that you're going to want to connect more devices, right? Like everything pretty soon, tire gauge pressures, they're all going to need to send data back and forth. And as this data builds, the restrictions of the CAN bus, while it's really useful nowadays, it may not be able to support the bandwidth that is needed in the future. And autonomous vehicles obviously are going to be, everybody's talking about them right now. So that's like definitely going to be hackable. Uh, yes, the magic truck. I had to throw that in there, right? Because that's like the most futuristic car in development. All right. So if you love this workshop, or maybe you're just interested in doing this, I know Derek, you said you were interested in doing it. So make sure you put it in park. Wheels are blocked. If you have jacks, lift it up so it's not even on the ground, so it's safe. So like, where can you find information? So I said, if you don't want to do this on your own car, or you want to look at other cars to compile comparison data, there's these things called DBC files. They're CAN bus databases. Comma AI maintains a GitHub repository of these, because I don't know if you know who Comma AI is. It looks like Derek knows in what Comma AI is, but they're basically an organization that's building autonomous driving applications, and like cameras and stuff like that. So they obviously have a lot of oh yeah, local to San Diego. That's right. A lot of them are, yeah. No, AI as in artificial intelligence. But yeah, so they're really up and coming. So they share a lot of these files online. And if you really like doing this, the Car Hackers Handbook goes into a ton of detail. And there is a PDF, which I linked, or not a PDF, but a web version that's open for free. And I believe it's legally accessible. So go check out the Hackers Handbook to learn more and report back. I would love another workshop on this with more information. All right, so that's kind of all I had for this evening. We're coming up right on that hour mark, which I love hitting. So does anyone have any questions? So what's in the Car Hackers Handbook? Let me find the link for you real quick, and we can take like a brief look at the. Yeah, I put a lot of things in here. So opengarages.org, No Starch Press. So just looking at this, right? So I'll zoom in a little bit so people can read this. But you've got your, oh, that took longer and went way too far. So just looking at the table of contents, you've got your CAN bus, but then you're moving on to the ECU, which is really your, that's where a lot of the processing power happens. You can build test benches, vehicle communication, weaponizing CAN findings, attacking the wireless systems with SDRs. So this is like, this is an online one, okay? Excuse me. So, go buy this book. No Starch Press is an awesome organization. If you follow Humble Bundle, they often have these books available. So go get them there also. I feel like I deserve advertising funds from them now. But yeah, so really, this book is going to give you pretty much everything you need to get pretty far. I would say, like, it covers infotainment systems, vehicle communications. So definitely highly recommend this as where to go if you want to get into the hobby. Great question, Derek. Thank you for all your questions. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to have an interactive audience. You too, Ashan. Samuel, Steven, do either of you have any questions? I don't want to leave you hanging. Awesome. I think that wraps it up, at least for the recording. So let me go ahead and stop recording.